Today on TFL Bike, you join us here in our hometown of Denver, and behind me is the brand new Ducati DesertX. In today's video, we're going to be talking to Jason Chinnock, the CEO of Ducati North America, about this bike. And before we start filming, they're going to let me pull the cover on it. The event actually hasn't started yet, but we get to check it out a little bit early. So we've got Jason here to talk about the DesertX. So to start off with, I'd love to talk with you about the design of this motorcycle. Where was Ducati pulling inspiration from when you came up with this? Because this is a really unique looking ADV.
Yeah, actually, the original concept of the DesertX was a scrambler. I don't know if you know, a couple years ago we showed it at the Milan show, the EICMA, the Milan Motorcycle Show, as a scrambler, and really with the idea of how can we expand the scrambler brand. So you could see that it actually draws from a bit of heritage that Ducati has during those days where they did some of the Paris-Dakar racing.
Right.
We wanted to add elements of technology on this bike that would transcend it from just being a scrambler into the world of Ducati, which, you know, getting into all of the, between the engine performance and so on.
6 different riding modes. I mean, there's a lot of tech that's in here. And also, it's not all just looks. It's not all just a pretty bike. I mean, you've got 9.8 inches of ground clearance, 9 inches of suspension travel in the front, 8.5 in the rear, 5.5 gallon tank. A lot of the things that you look for in a bike, it's going to be capable off-road. So there's some serious components.
And it's not just meant to be a pretty face. I mean, that's one of the things that obviously we're very well known for design, but what about our off-road capability? And one of the things that I can share with you is that this chassis for this bike has specifically been designed for off-road use.
Right.
It wasn't like a chassis that we took off of another motorcycle and figured out a way to retrofit 21-inch wheel to the front of it. It was something that was purposely designed for this motorcycle. Even from the original concept, which was basically a desert sled that was reskinned with a larger motor, this has been ground up. So from that original concept to what you see here is a completely different motorcycle. Now the model that we're seeing here today is actually a pre-production prototype. So a lot of the elements that you'll see on it are rapid prototyping plastic, and a lot of things will be finalized in the final bike. But for purposes of being able to give proportions and just the overall aesthetic and design elements of the bike, it delivers on that.
It's a great thing to look at in the flesh. And some other components that I love. You've got dual 320 millimeter discs in the front, of course, Brembo brakes, as always. And then moving towards the middle of the bike, you've got 937cc Testastretta V2. But from what I understand, this isn't just pulled directly out of the multi-strut or anything. It's the gearing is different. You guys have made some changes to this to suit this particular bike.
Well, and the motor itself has been refined in the last year when we brought out the new monster, the 937 Testastretta 11-degree motor. Was basically updated in terms of being able to make it a little more reliable, even though it had already been proven to be a very bulletproof motor with 18,000 miles between service intervals. But we were also able to lighten the motor. We shaved a little bit, about 3.5 pounds out of it. But when it came to the DesertX, we said to ourselves, what are the things that are unique characteristics of this bike that it needs? Unlike, let's say, the Multistrada Enduro, which had a shorter first gear, this is a shorter first and second gear. And my experience on the Multi-Enduro has always found a need to want to go to a second gear, yet it being too high for low speed, kind of agility around obstacles and rocks and off-road riding. And then the sixth gear acts, I wouldn't say officially as an overdrive, but it allows you to have good fuel efficiency when you're on that open highway and just you settle into sixth gear and you're riding and you just want to get to the next destination.
Part of the expectation of an adventure bike is that it can also go long distance, that you're not just going to put it in the back of your truck and take it to a trailhead like a dirt bike. It needs to be able to get to the trailhead and ride up it as well.
This is not a trailer plane. I never want to see this in the back of somebody's trailer or on the back of somebody's truck. Like, this should be ridden to where you're going. That's the concept here. And when you're talking about, like, not only being comfortable, you also want to make sure you have good range. So the 5.5 gallon tank is really good for that. But then we have the ability of the auxiliary fuel tank, which goes in the rear of this. And this one doesn't have it retrofitted to it, but it's an accessory from us that adds 2.1 gallons. So you're talking,
that's a lot of fuel.
Over 7.5 gallons of fuel to this bike. And quite honestly, I run out of steam by probably 5 gallons. But it's nice to know if you have one of those days that you want to push it, or you don't know where your next destination is going to be for getting fuel, you have that additional fuel tank on the back, and that's how I'm equipping my bike. I mean, my bike will have that fuel, that auxiliary tank on the back in order to accommodate those longer rides.
And speaking of the fuel tank, and also you just can't get away from design on this bike. Something else that I love is that the fuel fill is off center. Is there any functional use of that, or
no? It's really a design
aesthetic.
Yeah. It looks cool.
I like that.
I mean, when you look at Ducati's, our values are style, which is the first, sophistication, performance, and trust.
Yeah.
So that is clearly an element of style. It just, why put it in the center if you could put it off center, and it have that very cool aesthetic.
Yeah, just look a little bit unique.
Yeah.
Something else I like, your hand guards here too. I mean, it's not just a simple piece of plastic. Everything about it is upgraded. It's made more premium, and that makes sense. I mean, this bike carries a price tag of $16,795, and that's obviously towards the high end, but it's a premium product. Something else that I like tech-wise is the layout of this 5-inch TFT. I like that it's vertical rather than horizontal.
Well, the concept is to kind of make it look like a rally book.
Yeah.
And the original concept of it was that. And then when we saw the option for functionality of what we can add to the bike, and to be able to change through 3 different display modes. I mean, you have the standard display, which has the tach and the speedo and the gear position indicator, and then you have more of like a rally book that actually you can set trip clocks and meters so that you can figure out where you're going, and all the other information is minimized. And then you even have the option for upgrading it for a turn-by-turn navigation that's built into it.
Yeah.
Plus, if somebody doesn't want to utilize that and they want to use their own navigation, we have a bar that's like an aluminum bar that will wrap around that area that allows you to mount some different accessories to the bike as well.
Yeah, and I think it's overall a really good thing that there is a lot of tech on this bike, because for an on-road motorcycle, you want it to have a little bit of weight, and this is 445 pounds dry, I think 492 wet, and that's a decent-sized bike when you finally get off-road. But tech features, not the screen specifically, but the different riding modes, like we said, 6 different riding modes, multiple of which are for off-roading. Those are going to help you a lot to manage this bike and its weight when you're getting off-road.
Well, 2 of those off-roading modes, as you mentioned, are actually specifically dedicated to dirt, to off-road. One of them is Enduro, which is a mode that's been utilized on other motorcycles of ours ever since the very first Multistrada 1200, which had the 4 bikes in one concept. And the Enduro, basically, it lowers the power, and let's say it increases the level of intervention on the electronics, with the exception of ABS. It has a Enduro ABS. And then there's Rally, and Rally's basically wide open and a very low intervention.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about both of those, though, is that if you're in either one of those off-road riding modes, which you would obviously be if you're riding off-road, you can actually just turn the ABS off. There's a button right on the handlebars that if you're in one of those modes, you just push the button off. And so you don't have to go in and, through the settings and the menu, you can actually, it's a quick button to be able to get it off. So when you're riding off-road, a lot of people, I will use the Enduro ABS if I'm going kind of a relatively high rate of speed along a fire road.
Yeah.
But if I'm getting technical and I want to use the bike to slide and to have fun, I'm going to turn it off.
And
I want to control it.
It's good to make those controls easy to find, because getting stuck on a steep dirt hill on a bike that has ABS on that you can't switch off,
you just find yourself spinning.
Is a problem.
But then to the other extreme end of things, of course, you have all the other modes that you would expect, like urban and wet and touring.
Right.
But also in the sport mode, and it also has cruise control. So while it's not a dynamic cruise control, which is on the Multistrada V4, it is a static cruise control, so that when you are going those long distances and you're having to slab it on the asphalt, you get a chance to shake your hand and let loose a little bit in order to be able to not numb out.
Yeah, change the personality of the bike a little bit, which, like you said, helps with versatility. And then another aspect of being versatile is that you've got sort of a dual purpose tire in this Pirelli Scorpion Rally STR. So a little bit on-road, a little bit off-road. I would imagine for the customer, you're going to want to spec your tire depending on what you think you're going to do with the bike the most.
Exactly, and that's actually why for the first time since the 70s, this is a production motorcycle with a 21-inch front tire from us.
Yeah.
So that's a big leap. Even in some of the early product meetings, there was discussion and debate as to what the tire configuration was. I could tell you that I was a very, let's say, vocal advocate of the necessity to have a 2118.
Yeah.
Not just because of the functionality. I mean, knowing what a 21 can do properly off-road, But also, to your point, it's because there's so many options for tires now.
Yeah.
I mean, you have something like this, which is a great hybrid, which personally I love, because I like to throw it into the corner after I've just done ripping around in the dirt, and this gives me plenty of control off-road anyway. But I also want to make sure I'm not too compromised if I find a nice set of twisty asphalt and I want to corner it.
Yeah.
So this will give you that traction and that stickiness of rubber there, but still be able to play off-road. But if you wanted something a bit more aggressive for the off-road, I mean, Pirelli has one where the lugs are a little bit wider spaced apart, plus there's a bevy of other things, even more, let's say, street-oriented or touring-oriented rubber for it as well.
Right.
I had a chance to talk to Antonio Mayo, who's in our launch video, of what I asked him flat out. I was like, hey guys, in that launch video, what did you do to the bike? What modification did you make in order to make that bike do all those things? And of course, there's no shortage of talent in his wrist and his body when he's riding that bike. But all they did was adjust the suspension, which is quite incredible. So when you think about it, the suspension is very, very nice in terms of setup and capable for a wide range of adjustments. So that if you wanted to do something as crazy as hitting giant sand dunes at full speeds and catching air and all that, you can do that. But then also you can tighten it up if you really want to take on the road.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
This is a motorcycle that we cannot wait to throw a leg over because it's just gorgeous. There's a lot of great equipment here like we discussed. So hopefully we'll see that soon, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.